Well, hello everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to do the Holy Crusader build. That is my character of choice in Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall. Now to get started, the Holy Crusader is in fact from Skyrim. The Holy Crusader's father was a healer from a very small village deep in the mountains of Skyrim. He has very few memories of his mother, a beautiful, kind woman who taught him magic. The Crusader barely reached the age of 18 as he heard talk of Tharn's usurping the throne. His father was a loyal citizen of the Empire and well known to the Emperor, who had been imprisoned by Tharn. The Crusader's father wept as he was unable to do anything to stop Tharn, rescue the Emperor, or stem the tide of evil that was pouring across the land. One day, the Crusader was heading home from work at the local lumber mill when he encountered a girl that he had seen from the next village over. She was being chased by some men. He immediately moved to defend her when he discovered that these weren't ordinary men. They were members of the Imperial Legion. He knew the girl. He knew she couldn't have done anything worth being arrested for, but the Imperial soldiers didn't even give him a chance to explain. They attacked him. Now, he had spent much of his youth sparring and training, so he wasn't that much of a pushover. And in evading one of the soldiers' blows, striking out one of his own as a kind of warning shot, the soldier made no move to protect himself or move out of the way. The blade cut through the soldier, revealing the human form to be a mere husk. The creature inside was not human. It was a monster that had been warped to look human. And as Tharn's illusionary magics dispelled off of the husk of the Imperial Guard, the others showed no emotion, but rather readied themselves to attack. The Crusader slew all of them and saved the girl. Though the Crusader could not act openly, he did strike at Tharn's forces whenever he could, all the while finding clues on Tharn's minions that he had been drawing power from some demonic source. The Crusader discovered that Tharn was drawing his power from a Daedric prince. However, there was nothing he could do about it. Not able to stand around any longer, the Crusader packed up his things and prepared to leave. Packed and ready, on his way out the door, a courier came with a letter that explained that Tharn had been defeated. A great celebration was being held in the Imperial City, and all those who had worked in secret to defeat Tharn were invited. The Crusader suggested that he and his father should go. However, his father, looking at the Crusader's backpack, got out his old armor and a staff, and told the Crusader that it was time to set out on his own. After several days of travel, the Crusader finally approached the Imperial City. Before him on the road was a band of travelers, and he ran up to the travelers to say hello. However, he noticed that the travelers had just been ambushed by bandits. Rushing to assist a woman who was about to be slain by one of the bandits, he parried the bandit with his staff. The staff unleashed a great lightning bolt, destroying both the bandit's weapon and the staff itself, blinding everyone in the area. When the blinding light subsided and the crackling thunder vanished from their ears, the bandits ran, and the Crusader was immediately overwhelmed by a mob of grateful people. These people were members of the Imperial family, relatives of the Emperor who were returning to see the celebration. They brought the Crusader with them before the Emperor, and the Emperor recognized his family name immediately, having known his father in the past. And so the Emperor rewarded the Crusader with a trinket of no small value, and then left him to enjoy the ceremonies. The celebrations went on for a couple weeks, and during that time, the Crusader was called to the Emperor's side several times, and they leisurely discussed the status of the Empire, what ideal rule meant, and several other things. The Emperor was impressed with his responses each time, as he judged the Crusader to be a good man. And so even after the celebrations ended, the Crusader stayed in the Imperial City for some time, often frequenting the Temple of the Eight Divines. It was there in the Temple of the Eight that he began to dedicate his time to studying each of the divines, and he ended up finding that he had an affinity for Stendarr, God of Mercy, and he often offered his restoration services to the members of the temple. While he declined to actually join the temple at the time, he was almost certain that it would only be a matter of time before he dedicated his services to Stendarr entirely. Training with knights in the Imperial City, it became quite apparent that all his previous victories had either been due to his enemy's weakness, such as the minions of Yeagar Tharn, or random chance in the case of the bandits. So he dedicated himself to training and getting better and better. One night an emissary of the White Gold Tower came to see him, as had happened several times before. However, the look on the emissary's face was not a pleased one, and the emissary would tell him nothing as they traveled together to see the Emperor. Under the cover of darkness, in a secret corner, with only a battle mage as witness, the Emperor spoke to the Crusader and asked him for a favor. As a Nord, he will have frost resistance and increased strength and endurance. We will choose from a list of classes, and by that we will scroll down past all of the Elder Scrolls 1 classes and click on Custom. We are immediately going to go to Special Advantages. The character's magic immunity is only really going to give him immunity to paralysis, poison, and disease. And we're going to take care of those in just a second. You're going to see how I'm going to balance this out to create an overpowered character. Now, increased magery times 3 is basically the same kind of increased amount of spell points you would get if you played a mage or a sorcerer or one of the pure spellcaster characters. Magic is fairly overpowered when it's used against you, but we don't have to worry about that. Along with this character's natural resistance to frost, with the 2 immunities, we've got magic covered. Now for disadvantages, this character has a critical weakness to disease, poison, and paralysis. What we're doing is, this is a power gaming exploit. We are basically giving this character critical weaknesses to the things he's already immune to. So he will never be affected by these things, but they give him stat points to work with. Now what the critical weakness to frost is going to do, it's going to be counterbalanced against the Nord racial resistance to frost, meaning that he's not actually going to have a weakness. Finally, the character is going to be forbidden from using leather armor because he's a knight. He is going to be clad in armor all the time. He is forbidden from using short blades, aka daggers. Daggers just aren't his style. And he is also unable to use orcish armor. And that's fine because there's better armors than orcish and there are worse armors than orcish, and we're just going to skip that tier if we find it. Now you're going to notice this difficulty dagger. That is basically how quickly you can level. What we're going to do is we're going to counterbalance this with a max hit points per level of 8. What we're doing is we're bringing that up to 20. So the character's still going to level up a lot faster, but at the same time he's going to get a lot more level ups. We could bring it all the way up to 30, but look at the increase for 30. It just simply isn't worth it for the 10 extra points. So the ease of leveling is going to be amazing on this character. Now as for reputations, now we're changing the reputations in accordance to this character's theme. This character is hated by the underworld because he's a righteous crusader that would never join the Thieves Guild or Dark Brotherhood. However, nobility likes him better, and the peasants like him better too. The merchants and scholars don't have any opinion, and you basically start, baseline on them. Alright, so in terms of skills, this character is going to have Long Blade as his primary attack. Critical Strike is going to be another primary skill where he has a chance to deal extra damage. Restoration is his third primary skill, and that basically lets him heal himself, obviously. Now for major skills, Mysticism is going to cover a lot of different magics, the utility spells that he can use. Stealth is going to allow him to avoid fights when possible because that is part of his character. Now as for medical skill governs how quickly he heals up while resting, and he's going to do that a lot. In general, restoration and medical are two high aspects of this character, but one is focus, which is magic, and the other is non-magical, which is major. Now you'll see at the top and the bottom of minor skills he has 2 other schools of magic, which will allow him to do miscellaneous things such as levitation and teleportation. For mercantile, that is his ability to basically buy and sell goods. It's basically it allows him to build reputation with the merchants. Now, for swimming and dodging, those are just basic movement skills. Finally, eloquence is central to this character. This character is polite in his discussions with people, and he wants to talk to the nobles well. That's what eloquence is for. Do not fast start, instead choose your character's career path. Whenever it asks you about magic, your priority should be Restoration, then Mysticism. So because Restoration is a valid choice, we choose Mysticism. What motivates this character is helping others. Now whenever it asks what you've been doing, your priority is always fighting, then socializing. So in this case, we're going to go sparring. Since childhood, this character has saved a piece of armor. Now in gratitude for your services rendered, the Emperor gave you blank. You should always choose a sword if a sword is an option. However, if a sword is not an option, you definitely want to go with what will sell the highest. I recommend either a silver staff or a book. In this case, I'll choose a book. As you grew older, you received additional magical training in Restoration. The childhood nickname was Quicksilver. I am friendlier than most with the dragons. Of all the disagreeable types, you have the most hatred for immoral assassins. This character cannot stand assassins. This character was intimate friends with a mage. Now this part is important. This character only worships Stendarr, the god of mercy. And the reason is because the Crusaders who he's going to join are actually followers of Stendarr. In terms of what you have the most trouble with, just go ahead and avoiding diseases. Now, these are the stat points that I assigned. It is not that important. Your starting stats won't make or break the character if the character is built the way I built it. I built this character so that it would be generally overpowered, and you won't have to worry about minor nuisances like this. However, in a more contemporary build where it's more role-playing based, you need to look at these stats seriously and use the save roll, load roll, and re-roll features to get the best possible result. Now the reflexes is basically the overall difficulty of the game and how quickly the enemies attack. This was when people didn't understand the concept of Twitch gaming and action RPGs were not a thing. So basically, if you have played Oblivion, Morrowind, Skyrim, any of these games, then very high is what you're used to. And anything lower is going to actually cause a slight penalty to your character in terms of the speed they level up. So always have it very high, unless you're a real wuss that absolutely cannot beat the game otherwise. And I mean, if you have a somewhat poor character build and you put the reflexes on very low, well, congratulations, it works. But the penalties are real and the impact really isn't. Now, the amount of damage you'll take from enemies will become increasingly negligible as you level up, as you go from 40 to 60 to 80 to 100 hit points, where you're only supposed to be getting about 8 normally. Now, your magic will continue to increase as you raise your intellect up to 100, at which point you'll have 300 spell points to work with. With 300 spell points, you can really cast any spell you want. You'll even be able to create custom spells as your skill goes up. And I recommend almost immediately joining the Mages Guild and creating what I call a Gimp Heal spell. What a Gimp Heal spell is basically heals you for the minimum amount possible, and you just spam that rapidly for precise, non-wasteful heals that also raise your skill faster. The first stat you're really going to want to invest into is agility, because it's going to govern your ability to actually hit the enemy. Strength governs your damage and how much you can carry, whereas agility governs whether or not you can actually hit the enemy. So obviously agility is where all your points are going to go into in the beginning, and then eventually you're going to want to break into intellect so you can cast more spells, then finish up your strength and endurance. But there's no real mandate as to what order you need to go on these after you get your agility up. I mean, it's all up to you. And with this character build, you really can't fail very easily, as long as you use all the tools that are available to you. As I said earlier, this is a power gaming build, and as a result, it is fairly overpowered compared to any other build, and you'll find that Daggerfall is relatively easy once you've properly geared and established this character. Now, in order for your character to be properly recognized as a Crusader of Stendarr, you'll need to join one of Stendarr's temples. You can only join one temple per character, so in order to join the Temple of Stendarr, you need to go to either the Alkir Desert or one of the other kingdoms listed here on this page. Once you've gone to one of those kingdoms, travel to a major city and inquire with one of the citizens about where a Temple of Stendarr can be found. you should have all the basic requirements to join the temple straight off at the beginning of the game. Obviously, in addition to the Temple of Stendarr, the character should be joining the Mages Guild and Fighters Guild. Keep in mind that if you do choose to join a knighthood, you will immediately alienate all of the kingdoms that are opposed to the kingdom that that knighthood is in. So, for example, if you join the Knights of the Dragon in Daggerfall, then Tulun and a bunch of other random kingdoms that have different alliances that are opposed to Daggerfall will immediately hate your guts, and you'll lose out on opportunities there. However, the opportunities for having a knighthood, for being in one, are pretty damn good. So, choose carefully. I do recommend the Knights of the Dragon if you don't plan on doing politics in a bunch of other kingdoms. However, if you do plan on doing politics, then you just pretty much have to figure out the relationships between the different kingdoms and make sure your choice doesn't conflict with any of the other kingdoms you like to visit. Under no circumstances will choosing a knighthood alienate you entirely from that kingdom. You can still do stuff in all of the kingdoms. You can still use the temples and guild halls and everything. However, being alienated with a kingdom, what that means is that the palace and all of its residents, specifically the king, queen, and high nobles, will all refuse to speak to you, making politics in Daggerfall, the game as a whole, kind of difficult. But I have only scratched the surface as to what the Holy Crusader can get into in Daggerfall. So I recommend going to uesp.net/wiki/Daggerfall:/Daggerfall. That is the official page for Daggerfall on the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages. I know, officially unofficial. But you're going to find a lot of information like quests and gameplay and whatnot that'll help you get started and pick your direction, because once you get out of that initial dungeon, the world is yours to explore, and the world is huge. Just don't neglect the main quest. When you get an inventory note, a letter has been slipped into your pocket, or a courier hands you a letter, read it immediately and then take action. The only timed events that are absolutely critical about getting the main quest done are those initial contact points where, the lady will ask to speak to you in the inn. Don't miss those. Other than that, have fun, and I'll see y'all in Tamriel.